Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudirayet. Awesome. So a big namaste, a big welcome to everyone. So before we get started with today's class, I wanted to do a little poll. So maybe if you could stop sharing for just a second. Okay, thank you. Gotcha. So raise your hand if you've attended this Mahabharata course already from Gurukulam. Raise your hand. No one? Okay, interesting. Raise your hand if you've attended another Mahabharata class. So maybe Hanuman Chalisa, yoga, 30 shlokas, every kid should know. Okay, a few more people. Cool, cool. Or raise your hand if this is your first introduction to Gurukula. A few people? Okay, gotcha. If I could ask everyone else to go on mute for a second, please. Thank you. Awesome. So, even if you're already familiar with Gurukula, or even if this is your first time, we want to get a better idea of what we do here. And so if you could present that one slide. Sorry to put you on the spot. All right. So I myself was introduced to Gurukula a few years ago now. And for those of you who might be more familiar with the app and the program, you know that we have, hundreds of stories in the app. We have so many audiobooks, comic books, and so many different courses. But when I first saw the app, I think in 2018, there were a total of 10 stories. So there were 7 Mahabharata stories, and then maybe 2 Ramayana and 1 Panchatantra stories. So it's been over the course of many years and countless volunteers all across the world who put together all of this great information for us. So now what we're doing is taking this treasure trove of information from the app and from the stories and bringing it to you in these kinds of courses and workshops. So today you're going to get a sneak peek of what we do here at Gurukulam, and at the end we'll talk more about how you can get involved in our classes. All right, so let's get started with the story then. So this is an unmute kind of question. You can unmute and answer. What are the 2 great epics of India? Who knows?
Mahabharata and Ramayana.
Awesome. Okay, I heard it from a few people. So we have the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They're known as the 2 great epics, the 2 itihasas of India. But does anyone know which one took place first? You can shout out, you can unmute and shout that one out. Ramayana. Awesome. I think a lot of you knew that one. So between the 2, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the Ramayana actually took place first. So raise your hand. Have you heard of a yuga before? The word yuga? Raise your hand. A few people, I see a few thumbs up. So what a yuga is, all right, everyone else can go and unmute for now. Okay, so what a yuga is, if we take all of history, all of time, and we divide it into different periods, that one period is known as a yuga. So in Indian culture, in Indian history, there are 4 yugas. The Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. So in modern day, we are now in the Kali Yuga. So does anyone know which yuga did the Mahabharata take place in? Kind of a trivia question. You can unmute and shout this one out.
Treta.
Treta, any other? Dwapara, awesome, yes. So Treta was when the Ramayana took place, and we said that the Ramayana was first, and then later in the Dwapara Yuga is when we have this Mahabharata. So if the Mahabharata took place in the Dwapara Yuga, that means the Mahabharata is 5,000 years old. 5,000 years old. And that's a really big number, right? It's hard for us to understand, like, what is 5,000 years ago? So let's try to do something. What if we could time travel back to the Mahabharata? So we know now it's 2024. This is the year of 2024. What happened in 1947? What major historical event? in Indian history?
India
can shout
got
that one out.
independence.
India's independence.
Awesome. Yes. So if we imagine, if you can see me well, this is 2024. Let's call this 2024. This is Mahabharata. We're trying to get from here to here. 1947 is like maybe here. We've only traveled 75 years. We have 4,925 years left. So clearly, we have to go a little bit faster to reach the Mahabharata. So we're at 1947. Let's go to 1776. What happened in 1776? You can shout this one out.
America's independence.
Awesome. Yes, awesome. So we had Indian independence, and even before that, we had America's independence. So we've traveled about 250 years. We have 4,750 years more to go. Clearly, we have to travel a little bit faster to get to the Mahabharata. So let's really, speed run this. Let's go to year 0. What happened in year 0? Anyone know?
It was like in the
Okay, awesome. Yes, awesome. So I had a few different answers. So we can say Jesus Christ was born or the start of the Common Era. So if we go from 2024 to year 0, we've traveled a little over 2,000 years. The Mahabharata has existed for 3,000 years, even in the year 0. So we won't go any further, but as you can see, the Mahabharata is ancient. It's a very old story. But not only is it very old, it's also very long. In fact, it's the longest poem ever written. And I don't just mean in India, in the entire world. So the Mahabharata is 1.8 million words long. So raise your hand if you've read the Harry Potter series before. Raise your hand. Yeah? So how many books are there in the Harry Potter series?
7.
7? Yeah, I see some people holding up. Perfect. So there's 7 books, right? So imagine this. If you took all 7 books, put them together and counted every single word, that's about 1 million words. The Mahabharata is 1.8 million words. The Mahabharata is almost twice the length of the entire Harry Potter series. So just because the Mahabharata is very old and because it's very long, because of these 2 reasons, is that why we should be studying it? So I have another little exercise for you guys. So we are 10 minutes into the class. I haven't even started talking about the real story, but I want you guys to unmute and shout out any character you know from the Mahabharata. Let's take a few minutes. You can unmute it and shout out any character that you've heard from the Mahabharata. Let's see how many we know. Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Draupadi, Bhishma, Yudhishthira, Duryodhana, Karna, Ashwatthama, Drona, Dushasana, Krishna, Duryodhana. I didn't hear that one. Shakuni, okay, that's a good one. Balarama, okay. Karna. Awesome. So clearly, I couldn't even. Let's bring it back, guys. Awesome. So clearly, I couldn't even keep up there because you guys know even more than I could even keep up with. So isn't that really interesting? We haven't started looking at the story, and even still, you guys can name maybe 20 characters off the top of your head. Do you want to know why you know so many characters like that? It's because the Mahabharata is an encyclopedia of how to live our lives. The Mahabharata teaches us about the laws of karma and dharma in a way that when we study these characters, we understand how to live immoral lives ourselves. So that is the reason why we study it. Not just because it's really old, not just because it's really long, but because it teaches us how to live a proper life. So with that, let's get into more about how this great epic was actually written. You guys are doing a great job so far. I love the enthusiasm. So the Mahabharata was written by sage Veda Vyasa. He conceived it in his mind, but then he thought to himself, I need someone who's capable enough to actually write down, to actually pen down the story. So Vyasa approached Brahma and he said, who is someone capable enough to write this? So then Brahma suggested Vyasa to approach Ganesha. So Vyasa approached Ganesha. He asked him to write down his story, But Ganesha actually had one condition. He said, sure, I will do it, but as you're narrating, my pen must not stop, which means that Vyasa should not stop or hesitate in his narration as Ganesha is writing. So Vyasa said, okay, sure, but I have a condition too in that case. And then Vyasa said, before you write down anything, you have to understand the meaning and then only write it down. So then how this played out was that Vyasa would say a shloka to Ganesha, but he would say it in a very complex, abstract way. He wouldn't give a simple, straightforward sentence. So then Ganesha would take 1 second to process that the meaning of the shloka and then write it down. So in that 1 second, while Ganesha was understanding, Vyasa would come up with the next shloka. And so like that, the two of them wrote over 100,000 shlokas of the Mahabharata, which is then divided into 18 chapters, or which we call as parvas. So another interesting tidbit for you guys to remember is that Ganesha, he didn't use Google Docs to write, right? He wasn't using OneNote to write this doc. He broke his tusk. He's an elephant, right? He broke one of his tusks and he used that as a pen to write. So if you've ever seen a Ganesha, Vikrama, an idol, you might notice that he has one tusk missing, right? He's called Ekadanta, one with one tooth. The reason for that is because he broke his tusk to write the Mahabharata. So next time you see a Ganesha idol, you can think to yourself, it's because he broke his tusk to write it. So anyway, they wrote it all together, and the story takes place in this beautiful kingdom called Hastinapura. So the ruler of this kingdom was named King Shantanu. So this is where the story really begins. So one day, King Shantanu was taking a stroll by the river, and he saw this beautiful woman. This woman he's never seen before, but a beautiful woman. So he ran up to her and he said, I don't know who you are. I don't even know your name. I don't know where you're from, but will you marry me? So raise your hand if you've seen the Frozen movie, the first one, the better one. Hopefully everyone, it's been 10 years. Yeah, okay. So, in the very beginning of the movie, it's the same as what happened with Hans and Anna. It's 20 minutes into the movie. They literally just met. But what does Hans say? Will you marry me? And Anna's yeah, sure, that sounds good. So that's exactly what happened here, actually. So when King Shantanu approached this random woman and asked her to marry him, the woman actually said, I don't know you either, but sure, King, I will marry you. But I have one condition. So everyone has their conditions in this story. So this woman, this mysterious woman said, oh, King, I will marry you, but you may never ask about my identity, and you can never question any of my actions. If you ever ask me any questions, I will leave you right then and there. So thumbs up, thumbs down. Would you want to be with someone who said that to you? As a partner, as a potential spouse, partner? Yeah, probably not, right? That sounds very sus. You probably shouldn't do that. So King Shantanu didn't care. He was so blinded by love that he said, fine, I don't care, let's get married. And so the two of them did in fact get married. So in this point of the story, King Shantanu, the character, he doesn't know this, but we as the audience, it's revealed to us that this woman is actually goddess Ganga, Ganga Devi. You guys might know the Ganga River in India. So this woman is the human form of Ganga. So if you have any questions, we're going to take them at the very end. Everyone else, please stay on mute. Perfect. So any questions about the story or Gurukula, we're going to take it at the very end. Okay, so the couple got married, and soon enough, they had their first baby boy. So listen to this very carefully, okay? Ganga took this newborn baby, she walked to the river, and she dropped the baby. She drops the baby falls into the river, drowns, and dies. So King Shantanu sees this from afar. He sees everything that just happened from afar, and he is horror-struck. He's so devastated, he's horrified, and he wants to run up to her and say, what happened? Why did you just do this? But can he ask her any questions? No, right? He wants to run up to her and say, what did you just do? But he's not allowed to ask her any questions. So he's utterly heartbroken, but all he can do is just walk away. So then, sometime after, they have their second baby. So again, Ganga brings this baby to the river and drowns them. So 2 babies are dead. 5 more babies are born. You can unmute and answer. What do you think happens to these 5 babies?
They all got drowned.
Awesome. Perfect. Exactly. Exactly. So 7 babies so far, all killed in the river. So here we come to our first takeaway. In this whole time, Shantanu never asked Ganga, he doesn't know it's Ganga, but she never asked her why she's doing this. So our first takeaway from this story is if you make a promise, you should keep the promise. And if you don't think you can keep a promise, then don't make the promise. So we can even take a very basic example. What if one night we tell our parents, tomorrow morning, I promise I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. So the next morning, your parents shouldn't be ripping off the blankets on you at like 8 a.m., right? If you made that promise the night before, a simple thing to do is to actually get up in the next morning. So you can unmute and answer. If you make a promise, what should you do?
Stick to the promise.
Keep the promise. Awesome. Exactly. Simple. Awesome. Perfect. Yes. So now we come back to the story. The 8th son of Ganga and King Shantanu is born. Ganga again brings the baby to the river, but at this point, Shantanu can't stop himself any longer. He runs up to her. He gets a hold of her. He takes the baby out of her hand and says, "Who are you? You're a monster. What are you doing?" So Ganga smiles and she says, "Oh, king, you broke your promise. Because of that, I will leave you. But before I go, let me explain, what all of this is." And so Ganga starts narrating her own backstory. And so we kind of have a story in a story at this point. So Ganga says, "I am Goddess Ganga. I'm Ganga Devi in this human form. I'm in this human form because of the 8 Vasus, the 8 babies that were killed were 8 Vasus who were cursed by sage Vasishta." So then she goes into more detail about what all of this means. So she starts by explaining that in the Loka, in the heavens, there are these 8 Vasudevas. So Vasus are kind of like the elemental gods in Hinduism. So of earth, fire, water, air, all of that. So the Vasus, one day, they were traveling in their Loka with their wives, and they happened to come across sage Vasishta's ashrama. And this sage had a beautiful cow named Nandini. So this cow wasn't like any ordinary cow. It was this glowing, radiant, most perfect cow that you can ever imagine. So the 8 Vasus, these gods, along with their wives, were admiring Nandini when at one point, the 8th Vasu's wife, so the 8th Vasu was named Prabhasa, his wife turned to him and he said, "Hey, could you get that cow for me?" And Prabhasa said, "No, it's not our cow. I can't just bring it over. I can't just steal it." But his wife kept asking, she kept asking, she kept asking. And so eventually Prabhasa said, "Fine, whatever, I'm going to steal this cow for you." So because the sage wasn't there at his ashram at the time, Prabhasa, along with the other 8 Vasudevas, they stole Nandini and they quickly ran away from that scene. So what was the first takeaway I mentioned just a minute ago? You can shout out, you can unmute and shout it out.
If you make a promise,
If you make a promise, you should keep it.
Awesome. So the first thing we said, taking the example of Shantanu, was if you make a promise, you should keep the promise. So now coming to the story about Nandini, we're seeing our second takeaway. The takeaway here is pretty straightforward too. Don't steal anything. Not just cows, not just someone's possessions, but don't steal anything. And this idea, we'll get into more detail in the full Mahabharata course, but we should also not steal anyone's happiness. So what does that mean? For example, what if one day I'm in a bad mood, but my mom says something to me, something totally unrelated, but because I'm in a bad mood, I give her a snappy, rude response. That would be stealing her happiness, right? Even if it's a simple incident. So as we probably all know, we shouldn't steal material objects. I shouldn't be stealing your phone or your laptop or something, but we should also be aware that we shouldn't steal anyone's happiness. We should treat everyone well as well. So that's our second takeaway for now. Coming back to the story, So the 8 Vasus all left with Nandini, and eventually sage Vasishta came back to his ashrama. So this sage was a very powerful and knowledgeable saint, right? So he actually had divine vision. So using his divine vision, he could see that when he saw that his cow was missing, he used his divine vision and learned everything that had happened. He had realized about the 8 Vasus, about Prabhasa and his wife, and about how they stole the cow. And when sage Vasishta saw all this happening, he grew really angry. He said, these Vasus, these devas, these gods are acting like humans by stealing. Because they're acting like humans, I curse that they will be born as humans. Heard of the news of the curse, and they came running back to sage Vasishta. They got on their knees and they're saying, please, 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 please take the curse back. But sage Vasishta said, the curse has already left my mouth, and so now I can't retract it. I can't take it back. But what I can do is reduce the effect of the curse. So because the Vasus requested Vasishta to reduce the curse, what he said was, you will still have to be born as a human, but you will be killed immediately, so that way you don't have to live the full life of a human. You'll be born and then immediately be killed, so that way you can return to the heavens as a deva, as a god. But he only gave this exception to the first 7 Vasus. To the 8th Vasu, Prabhasa, he said, because you were the one to actually steal the cow, the others were just helping you, you do have to live the full human life. But because to still give a reduction, you will live a very noble life. So you still have to be born and all of that, but you'll live a very noble life. So then Vasishta told the Vasus, go talk to Ganga Devi, go meet her and request her to be your mother on earth, so that way she can relieve you from the life and you can come back to the heavens. So now Ganga has explained everything to King Shantanu. So give me or raise your hand. Have you heard of the word karma before? Raise your hand. Yeah, hopefully not from like Taylor Swift or Jojo Suyo, but hopefully you've heard of the word karma before. So give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Could Shantanu have known every single part of this backstory before Ganga told him? Yes or no? Seeing a lot of no's, right? Because there's so many layers to this. There's the Vasus, there's Nandini, there's sage Vasishta, there's Ganga. There's so many layers to this backstory that eventually leads to the present day of why Ganga was killing all of these babies. So when we're taking this very abstract concept of what is karma, this story is the first example in the Mahabharata of what is karma. And it shows us how, regardless of if we know the reason or if we don't know the reason, everything happens for a reason. Everything unfolds in a certain way because it was meant to. So again, this story of Ganga's backstory and why she had to kill all of these babies and how King Shantanu was involved, this is our first story of the law of karma in the Mahabharata, and there are countless more as the story goes on. Are we good so far? Everyone following along so far? Okay, you guys have great listening ears. So, because Shantanu still broke the promise, Ganga did have to leave him, but she actually took this 8th son with her to raise him for a few years. So she named the son Devavrata. Can everyone unmute for a second and say Devavrata? Let's practice saying it. Devavrata. Awesome. Yes. So he's a big character. Yes, awesome. So he's a big main character. So we're going to see him in a lot more. Devavrata, awesome. So Ganga has Devavrata, and now she raises him with the best of the best gurus, the best of the best sages. And this Devavrata, just as sage Vasishta said, he became a very noble, a very courageous, very righteous young man, even from when he was really young. So after Devavrata learned everything he could with his mother Ganga, Ganga came back to Hastinapura and returned Devavrata to King Shantanu. So Shantanu was so happy to see his son, and finally they were living happily together. So this isn't where our story ends. But let's see what Shantanu does next. So it's been many years now. Shantanu is once again walking by a river, and this time he doesn't see a beautiful woman, but he smells something really divine. You know, like when you're baking like fresh baked chocolate chip cookies in the oven and you can like really smell it in the kitchen? He smelled something so sweet and so enchanting. So he asked around in the local town, and he eventually found out that that divine fragrance was coming from a woman. And that woman was the daughter of the chief fisherman in the town. So Shantanu is a very like straight to the point kind of guy. So he went to the chief fisherman, and you know what he said? He said, "Can I marry your daughter?" Round two of this. So the fisherman said, "You know, King, it would be such an honor for you to, or for our daughter to marry into the royal family. But if I'm being honest, I do have one concern." So this fisherman explains to Shantanu, "You know, the king, you already have a son. You have Devavrata. And you've already crowned him the heir to the throne. Devavrata will be the next king after Shantanu. So my concern is that the kids born to you and my daughter, they will never be royalty. They will never have the throne for themselves. So, O king, you can marry my daughter if you promise Devavrata won't be the next king, and instead my grandkids, so the kids of you and my daughter, they become the next royalty instead." So thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you think Shantanu would agree to this condition?
No.
I'm seeing some mixed reviews. Okay, interesting. So I'm seeing some no's, some yeses. Interesting. So, in fact, Shantanu, he felt too bad to betray his son like that. He didn't want to abandon Devavrata. And so he couldn't agree to this condition, and he just sadly left the fisherman's house. So even though he left, she was still feeling really sad. He couldn't get over this woman. So even back in the palace, he was really sad. You know, he didn't want to get up. He didn't want to eat. He was feeling so bad. And Devavrata is a very kind and loving son. So he noticed very quickly that something was wrong with his father. So he tried talking to his father. He said, "Dad, what's up? Why are you feeling so bad?" But Shantanu wouldn't reveal to his father or to his son what was going on. So Devavrata was very clever too. So he thought to himself, "Let me ask my dad's charioteer." Because the charioteer goes everywhere with the king, right? So the charioteer knows a lot of information of, you know, who the king talked to, what they did, all of that. So Devavrata went to the charioteer, and the charioteer said to him, "You know, you're right. Your dad has been acting weird. He's been acting very sad since the last time he met this chief fisherman a week ago. So why don't you go to the fisherman and ask him what went wrong?" So Devavrata visited the fisherman himself, and the fisherman explained everything that had happened. He explained how, you know, Devavrata, your father, the king, was interested in marrying my daughter, but I said no unless his or my grandkids are granted royalty instead of you. Your father couldn't agree to this condition, and so he left very sad. So now listen carefully to what Devavrata says next. When the fisherman explained that this is what happened, Devavrata, in an instant, without any hesitation, said, "Oh, that's it? Well, in that case, for the sake of my father's happiness, I give up my right to the throne." In an instant, he said that. And the fisherman said, "Oh, Prince, you're very noble, and I trust that you will keep up your vow. But I do have another concern. You see, one day you'll grow up, you'll get married, you'll have kids. What if your kids try to fight with my grandkids because they feel that you were wrongfully taken away from the throne? You know, wouldn't that cause a big conflict? What would we do if that would happen?" And so again, without any hesitation, without batting an eye, Devavrata said, "In that case, I give up my right to marriage and to kids." So when Devavrata made this announcement, devas appeared in the sky, and they started showering flowers on him, and they started chanting Bhishma, Bhishma. So Bhishma means someone who makes an impossible vow but keeps it up, lives up to it. So since then, Devavrata became known as Bhishma. Okay, so I have a question for you guys, but I want you guys to actually use the raise hand feature in Teams. So the question is, why did Devavrata do this? Why did he make this promise? So if you have an answer, raise the hand like with the feature, and then we'll call on a few people. Okay, it looks like we have a few people. Nidhi, if you want to tell me the list. We'll take maybe 3 answers.
Okay, I think the first person to raise their hand was Shravan. If you want to answer.
Devavrata did it just to make his father happy. He just wanted his father to be happy.
Awesome. So he did it just to make his father happy. Next person on the list, anything you want to add to that? I think the next person is Charan and Sanjay. Sorry. Charan and Sanjay.
Yeah, same thing. Like, he wanted to make his father happy, so he sacrificed his stuff.
Okay, awesome.
His intro to make his father happy.
And the last person, Sambit, if you want to add anything to that, or if you're thinking, same idea.
The fisherman was saying that Devavrata was marrying his daughter, so that's why.
Awesome, perfect. So you guys got it perfectly. Devavrata did this not because his dad told him, not because the fisherman told him, not because the charioteer told him. No one told him to do this. He did this out of the pure love and the pure respect that he had for his father. He saw that his father was sad. He learned the reason, and without thinking selfishly about himself, he gave up something for his father's happiness. So in our daily lives, I don't think our parents want us to like give up marriage for them. I don't think that's what they're really interested in. But again, we're going to use the raise hand feature. Raise your hand and tell me, what are some other ways you can show your parents that you care? Any ideas there? And then we'll take maybe 3 or 4 people here as well.
The first person to raise their hand was Avyukt.
People. Oh, I see it now. Yep. Others, yeah.
So by doing your homework.
Okay, by doing your homework. Awesome. Good thoughts. Who do we have next?
Anitri.
You up the dishwasher.
By helping them do chores.
Okay, by helping them do chores. Awesome. Good thoughts. We'll take maybe 2 or 3 more.
I see Shravan raise their hand again.
To help them with the things that they need help most.
Okay, yeah, to helping them in different ways too. Yeah, great answer.
In the ways that they need help most.
Like we all need help sometimes. Yep.
Yeah.
Is it Vaishnavi next?
By helping them with their daily chores and caring for them when they need help the most.
Awesome. So it sounds like chores again and helping out whenever possible. And we'll take one last answer. Is it Alekia?
Yeah. Just getting good grades.
Okay, gotcha. So doing well in school, doing well there too. Awesome. So with the story that I mentioned earlier about Ganga's backstory, I said that was the law of what? If anyone remembers, the law of what? You can chat this one out.
Traditions.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So the previous story, the one I said that there's lots of different layers to this, that was our first example of the law of karma in the story. Now, this example, is the first example of the law of dharma in the story. So dharma, if we loosely translate it, we can understand it as our responsibilities. So for example, I'm a student. I think we're all students here. So as a student, I have certain responsibilities. I have certain dharma as a student. For example, I have to go to class. I have to pay attention. I have to do my homework, like you guys are saying. I have to study for exams. This is my dharma related to me being a student. But I'm also a daughter, right? I'm also someone's kid. I have dharma as being a son or a daughter. So as a son or a daughter, as a kid, you guys said it perfectly. Some of my dharma is doing chores, helping out with the housework, helping out with anything else my parents need, or taking care of my own responsibilities, like getting up and doing homework. That is some of my dharma as related to as being a child. Or raise your hand. Let me give you some more maybe inspiration. Raise your hand. Do you ever tell your parents compliments like, hey, thank you for making my favorite food today? Anyone do that? A few people? Okay. Or do you say, thank you for picking me up after school today? Something like that? A few people? Yeah, so clearly there's a lot of different ways of how we can show our dharma to our parents and as kids. So you guys had some really great answers, and I know I gave a few too. Maybe even if you don't do this now, this is something that you can think of in the future and start practicing. You can think to yourself, just as Devavrata was so selfless with his dad, how can I be selfless with others as well? So give me a thumbs up if that's all making sense. Awesome. So we already covered karma and dharma. How awesome is that? Okay, so let's wrap up the story, and then we have a Kahoot coming up. So Shantanu was so touched with what his son did for him. He was so touched and so impressed, because it's not an easy thing to give up royalty and your future with a family. So Shantanu said to his son, Bhishma, now that his name is Bhishma, you're no ordinary man. And because of that, you don't deserve to die like an ordinary man. So Shantanu gave his son the power, the boon, to choose the date and time of his death. So I know we're very early on in the story, but if you guys take the course, you can see where that comes up into play much more down the line. So anyway, because of Shantanu's selfless act, because of Bhishma's selfless act, Shantanu and Satyavati got married. So that is where we're going to end the story today. And again, you can find more information about each class, the registration, all of that information at learn.gurukulam.com. So before we open the floor to questions, let's say the Mangala Shloka together, and that way, we're all done here. So again, I'm going to say it. Please unmute and repeat after me. All right, everyone sit up straight. Let's focus. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah. Sarve Santu Niramayah. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for being such a good audience. If you have any questions, please stay behind. Otherwise, thank you for joining today. Dhanyavadaha.